Hey everybody, how's it going? This is a DJI Osmo camera with HDR, so we'll see how this works, how the mic is, how the video stabilization and all that is. I'm not putting in like maximum effort for video creation while on vacation. A lot of people think that I'm dead or on dialysis or something based on the color of my last two videos I've done from a hotel. When I'm on vacation, I open my laptop, I have my crappy little handheld microphone, I have my shitty $30 webcam that I bought about 8 years ago. And that's that. No color grading, I'm not carrying a Sony NEXEA50, I'm not carrying separate lenses, I'm not carrying a $500 lighting setup with me, because I'm on vacation. The comments in that video are particularly funny. So like, you change the angle that you're recording at by this many degrees, and you use the light above you and people think you're dying. Anyway, if you're looking for a beauty YouTuber or somebody who cares about this stuff, you're probably on the wrong channel. But anyway, so what I wanted to go over today was this topic that I have in the title, which is that the small scams often foreshadow the larger ones. And I think this is true even when you don't necessarily have all the information. I'm a little pooped, so I'm walking slower. Steve and I were in the ocean today with Erica and Venera, and there was this really large cruise ship in the distance. And I asked him, "Do you think I could swim to that?" And he says, "No way in hell." I tried. I failed, but I tried. And I also ran about 2 miles earlier. I didn't realize that when the cruise ship looks like it's maybe 50 feet away, that it's actually probably closer to 5,000 feet away, and that's an optical illusion that's making my brain think it's close when it's not. I actually got pretty far out there. There was this bird that had a very large bill that kept going into the water like this to pick things up, and at one point he landed right in front of me, and I didn't think it was a bird, I thought it was a shark, and I almost pissed myself in the water and turned back thinking, "Oh my god, shark, shark!" And then I looked back for a moment and I saw it was the bird. It's like, but I figured that was the sign for me to just head back, since I was probably way too far out in the water. It was fun. I learned that while Steve is faster than me on land by a good margin, I am faster than him in the water by a good margin, so not totally out of shape after all. So I had a dream last night, and it was a dream with some memories that I had from my college days, which were very short-lived, probably 10 years, maybe even 11 years ago or so, when I dropped out. And it was one of the best decisions that I ever made. Now, I did not make that decision with having all the data available to me that people who have been talking about how college is kind of becoming a bit of a scam have right now. I didn't have all that data available to me. I didn't have all that research yet. I had this one gut feeling that came from a conversation that I had where I just felt like I was being scammed. And it wasn't a big scam. I heard a skid, so I always turn around when I see that to see if someone's about to crash into the sidewalk. And it wasn't a big scam, it was a really small scam. But it was a small scam that, in my opinion, foreshadowed a much, much larger scam. So this had to do with textbooks. So I was going to college at the time, and back then, I was going to college about a year before I started this business, and then a few months after I started this business. And at some point, I started to realize that it probably made more sense to spend time in my business rather than college. So in the beginning, when I'm making like $400 a month max, it's like, okay, I really got to go to college. Then when I'm making $200 a week, it's like, okay, you still got to go to college, but damn, $200 a week, a little kick in my step. That's twice minimum wage at the time for doing something part-time. I'll take that. Then I got to the point of making like, $300 or $400 a week, and it's like, oh wow, that's not bad. I could actually afford a shitty little apartment with that. Then I got to the point, once I got to the point where I was making like $600 or $700 a week, it's like, wait, I could afford an apartment? Then once I got to $1,000 a week, it said, oh wait, I could afford to live on my own? No way. And once I hit around the $1,000 a week threshold, I quit college altogether. So it wasn't that I started making more money that made me quit college, because that was very transient at the time. Sometimes it would go up, sometimes it'd be like $1,000 a week, next week would be a $200 a week. So that wasn't the thing that made me quit. What made me quit was this one conversation that I had with a professor. And I had this conversation before I had done the cost-benefit analysis of what am I getting a degree in, how much does it cost, how much more will I make over my lifetime, is this really true? If you put this into if you take this formula and you consider how much more expensive college has gotten now, does this formula still work? Is the advice that I'm getting for people that went to college 30 years ago still relevant today, and blah, blah. I hadn't really done all that. I hadn't done some sort of formal study. So this was about textbooks. Now I got a textbook, some like $20 or $30 textbook, instead of buying the $300 one that I was told that I needed to purchase. That is not a sidewalk. That is an, I don't know, some Florida thing. But we'll go this way. So this was a textbook that was about $300, and I got a used one for about 20 or 30. Now when I did the homework, I was expecting to be a 70 student, maybe a 60, like worst case scenario. I wound up getting something like a 10 out of 100 on the homework, which I just thought was kind of ridiculous. Even guessing I should be able to get something right. And what I realized is that the textbook that I bought, being a year or two old, the questions may have been different. So when I did the multiple choice homework and I submitted it, maybe what I submitted was wrong because that was off. So I decided to take a look, and I realized that the questions themselves were the same. And the answers were also the same for the homework, for all 10 questions. But the only thing that was different were the order the questions were in. Excuse me. The only thing that were different were the order that the questions were written in, and that the answers were written for those questions. So let's say, if answer 1, A, B, C, and D are 1, 2, 3, 4, here would be A, B, C, D is 4, 3, 1, 2. So that if I were doing this multiple choice, I would never be able to get the answers right, even if I knew all the subject matter, because the actual multiple choice options were different. So I managed to go up to the teacher and have a conversation about this, and I said, okay, I know that you probably don't have the time to do the grading and look at the papers manually. Are you using Scantrons or something like? Or do you have a teacher's assistant that's taking the results that I submit you and putting it in some sort of Scantron format to automate it? And he said, no, I look over the submissions manually. I said, okay, so since you're looking over the submissions manually, I don't think it would inconvenience you if when I submit them, I write out the question and then I write out the answer. So instead of saying 1D, I write 1, what is the atomic number of whatever, and then I put the answer, the atomic number is 12. So this way, you don't have to refer back to the chapter or whatever to see what was there. You don't have to refer back to figure out what my question and answer was. It's literally right there in front of you. And since you're the teacher, you'll know what the atomic answer or whatever is for these things. And he said, no, I'm not doing that. This is not a negotiation. You need to buy the New Year's textbook. So here I was like, okay, you don't want to work with me at all, and you're kind of talking down to me like a piece of shit when I'm paying good money for the class. Oh, he is rushing somewhere. So I decided to be very stubborn. I actually bought the new textbook. And then I paid for someone to do this thing where you scan it, but it's scanned in a manner where it's searchable so that I could have a program scan through all the stuff, which is probably something that I shouldn't have been doing when I was in college and broke. But I did. And through this process, I was able to confirm that nothing was different in the textbook besides the first few pages where they, the copyright date, when it was published and all that crap, and the order of the questions. The questions themselves were identical. The answers were identical. The chapters were identical. The glossary was identical. The only thing that was different, the order of the questions and the order of the answers. There is no reason to do that other than to force broke students to pay more money for more shit. This is kind of like this whole bullshit subscription model you have on everything nowadays, where you don't own anything, you're just using it until they tell you need to buy another one. Does that sound familiar? So you've taken a book which has knowledge, but you already sold it, and the people who bought it, they may not need it again because they graduated the class, so they sell the used book to the next people. Oh shit, how are we supposed to make money within our infinite growth paradigm? I know what we can do. We can come up with this bullshit way to force you to buy the new book. By not putting new knowledge in there, we're just going to change the order of the questions and the answers so that you will fail every time you do your homework. So I thought I came up with a good idea. I will copy and paste the question and the answer since they're the exact same questions, exact same answers. I will copy and paste them. I will I will write them out in full so that the professor can see it. The professor is already reading the homework manually. This is not being done by Scantron or automated machine, so it's not going to add any time to him. And he said, he was incredibly dismissive. No, this is not a negotiation. You will buy the new textbook. And 2 weeks later, I quit college. I saw that as a scam. I saw that as a scam. And that small scam was actually foreshadowing of a much, much, much larger scam. So this is right around the time that student loans were becoming federalized. And once student loans became federalized, they were given out to many more people. I'm not saying it's a bad thing that more people can get education. It's just, sometimes you have ideas, and then you have the implementation of those ideas, and the two can be very messy when it comes to actually getting what you want. Right around the time that student loans became federalized, funny, college staffs just started to get much more bloated, and their rates started to go up incredibly because they knew that they could, if people were getting this, were able to get money much easier, then more people would apply. You have greater demand with the same supply. You could just constantly jack up prices as much as you want. And prices for college went up insanely. The amount of people getting degrees in fields that were not exactly marketable skill sets, I should say, went up considerably. The amount of people that were racking up $80,000, $100,000, $160,000 in student loan debt to get degrees in topics where they'll be lucky if they could find a job making $40,000 a year went up incredibly. And the value of having the degree went down incredibly because now everybody has one, and colleges just seem to have, over the last 10, I don't know how long, over these last 10 years, it doesn't seem like the person that's being a guidance counselor and guiding you seems to particularly care if you're going to have a good time paying off that student loan debt with the job that you're going to be able to get with the degree that you're getting. And a lot of kids don't do the math on this, and I know that people should take personal responsibility. At the same time, you have a lot of people who their parents, their grandparents, other employers, their teachers, and their guidance counselors are all saying, take a loan, go to that school, go in debt $160,000. Great idea! And when you're 16 or 17, we are taught to listen to our elders. We're taught to listen to the people that have more experience, to listen to our parents, to listen to our teachers, to listen to our guidance counselors. So listen, this doesn't seem to make much sense to me. This seems like a lot of debt. This seems like a lot of opportunity cost. I'm going to miss out on 3 or 4 years that I could spend on my business that at this point in time, with me going to college, got me up to making $800 or $1,000 a week. There's a lot of opportunity cost there, but fine. You guys know better than me. I don't blame the people that wound up getting suckered into this necessarily. I think it's sad that they got suckered into it. But you have a lot of people that got suckered into this. And that got degrees for, that are in debt for over $160,000 in fields where it's just not going to matter that much. There may be a degree where at $15,000 it's valuable, at $50,000 it's not so valuable, at $120,000 or $160,000 that's just a joke. And what kills me is that nobody tells them this. Like, if you come to my store and you say, I have an A1707 MacBook Pro and I want a new keyboard, what I will do is I'll say, listen, here's how much it costs to have it done here. But before I will allow you to make a ticket, you need to know that if you go to this section of Apple's website, which you can only find by Googling, funny how they design it that way, you will see that they'll replace it for you for free. And if you take a printout of this to the store, and you're polite but firm, they will replace it for free. I've always done this. I try to act in the best interest of the person who's walking in the door, even if it's not necessarily in the best interest of my short-term profit. Because there's a long-term profit that tends to be better served by not being an asshole. Or a total asshole, I should say, because sometimes I'm a semi-asshole. And I think that that's the way it's worked out. I had one employee back then, me. I have 15 employees now. Things kind of work out when you try and tell people the truth and do things honestly. And something tells me that many of these guidance counselors, many of the people in the process, didn't really tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, listen, I know everybody's telling you this. You're 17. Do you know what it's like to be in debt over $100,000 or $120,000. Here's what this career pays. So we're going to pump out 3,000 students this year that have this degree. And just so you know, on average, about 30 people get hired in this field, in this area every year. But we pump out 3,000 students with this degree. And this is a job that pays about $55K. I just want you to know that. And really sit on that, really think about that before you sign the dotted line. I don't think that conversation happens or has happened as often as it should, because the incentive structures at every level of our higher education paradigm are beyond screwed up and have been for a long time. And people will kind of misinterpret this when I say this, because I don't support our current public education with public schools, and I don't support a lot of what we do when it comes to higher education. I think education's a good thing. Even, you know, with the lack of board repair videos that I've posted over the past year, because I've just, you know, I started to get tired of them, and now I just can't do them anymore at all. That's another topic altogether. I think there's still over 600 of them there. Put a lot of work and effort into them, and every single one of those videos, you'll see an explanation from beginning to end of exactly what's wrong, exactly how I came to that conclusion, how you can come to that conclusion, what you need to know to come to that conclusion yourself. I value education. It's just, again, what I said before about implementation. Implementation matters. Sometimes implementation matters more than your intentions, and I think that our current system is just a bunch of good intentions, horrible incentive structures, horrible outcomes. I think that it has become a giant scam. When you have people that are pressuring people into getting degrees that cost over $100,000 to $160,000 at the opportunity cost of 4 years of their life, I think I made the best decision possible. I think I made a good decision at the time. And when I have people who come in for job interviews, and I see the way that, when I see that, that they're really highly educated, there's been this somewhat common thread that's not followed all of them. I can't say it's followed all of them, because some of them really got degrees that they got, you know, in an affordable manner, in a good field. But with a lot of the people that didn't, you could kind of almost cut the resentment in the air. You could feel the resentment. You could feel the, I shouldn't be here, I should be at a better place. Not to insult myself or my business or my staff or my employees, but you just get that, like, why am I sitting across from a guy that does janitorial work on motherboards? It's like clean up an aisle 7, fluxing hot air to get rid of the corrosion thing. I should be doing something better. You could tangibly feel them think that. And, like, from my point of view, it's like, I know I didn't do anything to deserve this. I can't hire you because of how much resentment is just steaming through you. I'm not gonna. You're not gonna do well here. You're probably not gonna get along with the other people here or treat my customers nice. You know, well. You're gonna be aggravated that you're working for this salary instead of something that would actually allow you to pay back that loan in a reasonable time period, which is not something I could afford to pay you or even pay myself when I look at how much fucking debt you went into. And I feel bad. But there's not really much I can do about it. But I dodged a bullet there. I didn't dodge that bullet because I did the cost-benefit analysis where I put on my glasses and my big nose and my Dilbert voice, and I did an exact analysis of how much additional I would make for how much time I spent in the degree, for the opportunity cost and the increasing cost of college over time, and the decreased value of a diploma if every other applicant has one, and whether or not what I learn while I'm in school will actually be applicable. Am I doing this because I actually believe that the knowledge I will get is worthwhile, or am I doing this because everybody else around me told me that getting this piece of paper is needed for the job, so you just go there and go through the bullshit you need to go through to get the piece of paper kind of thing? I didn't do this, this efficacy study. I didn't do this blind test of, what it was like to go to college in the 50s and 60s and 70s when my family members went to college versus me going to college now. Because there are a lot of people who have gone over whether or not it makes sense or whether or not it's worth it for you to go to college at certain costs in certain fields for certain degrees now versus 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. I didn't do any of that. It was a guttural feeling that I had based on one scam, a textbook scam, which is one of the most blatant, disgusting scams that there is. We are going to take this exact same information, but we're not going to let you purchase that information for 20 or 30 bucks that's already out there. You're going to spend $300 because we changed the order of the questions And the school, no. They're not allowed to deal with your little workaround, Lewis, that you tried to do so that you could save $270 just so that you could get the questions in that proper order. After you paid for the class. That's the thing that kills me. Like, if you want more money for the class, just say so up front. Don't tie the class to a textbook that's artificially inflated so that because you changed the order of the questions. That one scam told me everything I needed to know about the college experience. That small scam foreshadowed the larger scam, which is what has happened to the cost of college over the past 15 years. The cost of college over the past 15 years, insane. The administrative budgets, the office budgets, the additional staff that you have at a college that has nothing to do with getting you more information in your head, with educating you, with making you a more well-rounded person. There are so many people that work at colleges nowadays that in new positions that didn't exist 15 years ago. And these positions have nothing to do with you getting more information in your head. It's a bloated, giant bureaucracy that is supported by you spending $80,000 to $160,000 to get a bachelor's degree that may not even help you in your field to begin with. I skipped out on a giant scam. It's something that became a giant scam because I refused to accept the premise of the initial scam, which is a small one. And I've noticed that in life that when I don't pay attention to the small scam, or I don't address the small scam while it's right in front of me and still a small scam, that I wind up getting involved in a much larger scam. I mean, one of the obvious ones that was really, kind of right in front of my face was the Eugene Scam. This horrible contractor. Steve and I had a meeting with him. On that first meeting, we debated firing him because of some of the things that he said. I'm not amazingly knowledgeable when it comes to construction. This person was referred to me by someone that I had trusted, someone that he had said had done work for him in the past and was good, someone that ran a successful business for 13 years until he closed it. So I thought, all right, this small thing seems a little off, but all this other stuff seems to make sense, so fine. But if I kind of went with my gut, if I went with my gut feeling at the time, I wouldn't have been there for the larger scam. I would have cut my losses at the small scam. And with college, when I made that decision, what I did is I cut my losses. I said, I had taken 3 or 6 classes at that point. I had, those classes cost money, those books cost money, that time cost money, and it was painful to cut my losses at that point. But after the combination of the textbook scam with the fact that my income was going up, made me not willing to figure out how high that opportunity cost of giving up the next 3 years of my life, what that would be worth. And I made a gut decision. And that gut decision made sense. Now, had I cut my losses with that contractor in that first month, I probably would have lost $8,000 or $10,000 and a week and a half of time. But it would have saved me maybe $20,000 and another month and a half of time. It makes sense to cut things out while they're a small scam, because the small scam is going to be a foreshadowing of the larger one. And for me, the more I read about college and the more I read about this argument of forgiving student loan debt because it's this horrible burden, why would you forgive the student loan debt? Well, because we sold someone something that was BS. I mean, we're not forgiving housing debt. We're not forgiving car loan debt. Why? Because when you buy a house for $300,000 and you get a place that you could live for the rest of your life, you actually got something that was worthwhile. You didn't get scammed. So even though you have this debt that's hanging over your head for the rest of your life, which or the next 30 years, which a mortgage usually is, it's a debt that it's your largest expense for the next 30 years, you got something of genuine value for it. You got something that you can live in, something that nobody can take away from you unless you live in a high property tax state like a dumbass like me does, where they can, I don't know, $15,000, $20,000 a year in property tax. Good luck with it. We haven't had conversations about forgiving that debt because that's not a scam. As high as an expense as housing is, at the end of the day, at the very least if you're outside of New York, you kind of get your money's worth with it. Whereas with student loans, we've done this thing where we've given people something, or we've loaned people money to get something that's not even remotely worth what it is. And the amount of propaganda present that allows people to feel okay going into debt $180,000 when they're 18 is an amount of propaganda that we feel bad about. Why do you feel bad about that? If my kid at the age of 18, I mean, if somehow, obviously, if he was able to get a down payment at the age of 18, that would be insane. But if my kid at the age of 18 purchased a house for $300,000 and was in debt for 30 years to pay for that house, he's in debt for 30 years, but I don't feel like this is some emergency that needs to be forgiven, because if he got a house that was in decent condition, he didn't get scammed. Yet when you pay $120,000 or $180,000 for a bachelor's degree, particularly in a field that doesn't really pay that well, you kind of got scammed by the system. And I don't think that you're a bad person for it. I'm not judging you for it. I'm fully aware of the amount of propaganda that exists to get people to feel okay with that. And I understand that this is kind of based on what college used to cost a long time ago, before it was bloated with all of this administration, the administrative bureaucracy, and before you had all these ridiculous textbook scams and all this other shit combined with it. But it's kind of a scam. At this point in time in 2021, when I sit across from someone who I'm doing a job interview with, and when I'm on a Zoom call with them or a call with them, and I see the degree that they got, and I see that they're here, and then I just kind of look up that school afterwards, because I'm just bubbling with curiosity after listening to the resentment in their voice throughout the process, and I look at what it costs to go to that school. It's just scam is the only word that comes to mind for me. That's a lot of rice. The car is like 3 blocks away now, and I can still hear the rice. It's a lot. Whew, it is hot outside. Very hot outside, actually. All right, I'm gonna head back, take a shower, get some rest. I called a few real estate agents, sent some emails today. In the part of Florida that I'm in, not only is there a lot of traffic around the area that I was in earlier today, but commercial retail real estate is $17 a square foot. In my part of New York, it's $66 to $300 per square foot. 17 sounds a lot nicer to me, don't you think? I think so too. I think so too. There are some areas that I've been to where the traffic was low enough that even at the insanely low rates it just didn't make any sense. Because, I mean, if you're going to set up a place, even though a lot of businesses mail in, you want to have at least, some walk-in. I'm very curious to see what Florida realtors are like. What Florida commercial brokers and realtors are like. Is it all a giant scam like New York City? Is it a scam everywhere? Or is it just a scam in New York? That's something I'm going to find out. It's going to be fun. Anyway, I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you for watching. And as always, I hope you learned something. The small scam is going to foreshadow a bigger scam. So just think about that. And you don't have to listen to your gut immediately, but when your gut starts telling you something like that, start doing some research, start getting some second opinions. Might save you tens of thousands of dollars, or years of your life, or a lot of stress. All right, bye now.